Oh, well, hello. In this video, the topic that I'm covering is how to begin to establish healthy boundaries with your family of origin. So that just means the people who raised you, the people that you grew up with, basically, because this can be really challenging. And from the survey that we got, a lot of you asked different questions. How can I put boundaries up with my family and maintain them when they don't respect them, right? They don't understand what I'm doing and they don't respect them. That was one question. Why is it difficult to create healthy boundaries with my parents, my parental impactors, as I would call them? I'm no longer a child, yet they still have the same parent-child expectation of an interaction that's going to be the way that it was when I was a child. When do I know when it's time to walk away from a relationship that won't grow with me? My family is always going to be there, but they're so confining. Right? They don't understand. If I try to draw a boundary, they get mad. So let's talk about why is this hard and why do most of us go through this, try to figure out this transition in life, especially when it comes to boundaries. There is a process that usually in our late teens, mid to late teens, now I feel like it's happening earlier and earlier, but it's called separating and individuating, where it is your mandate to separate from your family of origin, to start to want to be more independent. And then in the teen years, we go through this phase where that's where we think our parents know nothing and that we know everything and that we want to do what we're going to do. And, the conflict is there, but it is a normal life transition. So some parents understand this, they understand psychology, they know that kids will act in this way, but it's normal. It's not going to last forever, right? This is just a period of time. And then a lot of parents take that incredibly personally. If they are insecure, if they did not separate and individuate from their families healthily. So there's a lot of things that impact how well or poorly we do this. If your family was very enmeshed, meaning not good boundaries between the participants, where everyone knew what was going on in everyone else's life, where everyone was talking about everyone, where people are endlessly giving you their unasked for advice and criticism, that can be a family system that makes it that much harder to create healthy boundaries once you get into young adulthood and adulthood. So, moving into control is a huge aspect of this difficulty. So there's lots of ways that families attempt to continue to control adult children. And even if you're in your early 20s, you're still an adult. I consider that young adulthood because we're still learning so many things, but you're still an adult. A lot of families, if they're families of means, will do this with money. So when my clients would come in and say, I'm getting married and my grandfather wants to buy us a house, or whatever, this is people who are wealthy. I'm like, do you want your grandfather buying you a house? Especially if I know that the grandfather is totally manipulative. Money is complicated. And in many family systems, it is a covert or overt way of maintaining control over your decisions. So I just put that out there because I want you to think about it doesn't mean someone has to be buying you a house for them to be using money to control you. They may be helping you with grad school. They may be helping you with rent. They may be helping you with expenses. That's lovely if there's not a million strings attached. But I have to say at least, 75% of the time, in my professional opinion, there are strings attached. And it's a way for parents to continue being in what I call a perennial parent role where there's no moving on. So why is it so hard for us to draw boundaries with childhood caregivers, even though we're already grown up? Part of it is that whoever your parental impactors were or are, they have their own stuff. They have their own boundary issues. They have their own life experience. So if they're not respecting your boundaries, it doesn't mean necessarily that they have bad intentions, right? That doesn't mean you have to allow it to continue, but we don't want to look at it like it's this malevolent, horrible action. It may just be what they know. They may be oblivious to how you're feeling. They may be so identified with their role as parent that they sort of let the rest of their identity fall by the wayside while they were raising kids, that they can't see clearly. They don't know what else to do if they don't parent, right? In a way that was appropriate when you were 12, but not when you're 22 or 32. They have their own boundary blueprint. You've heard me talk about this before, meaning the way they relate to boundaries. So that's a collection of past experiences, family and cultural expectations, beliefs, and stories that shape their behavior and your behavior when it comes to boundaries, past and present. Now, it's not your job to teach your parents how to navigate their own boundaries, obviously, but it is your responsibility to learn how to effectively communicate and assert your boundaries with them. So even if they're disordered at the moment, the boundaries, there are small steps that you can take to begin to shift to a more authentic and fully self-expressed or more self-expressed. Listen, with our parents, maybe we don't need to be fully self-expressed, but I have to say, disordered boundaries with adult children and parental units, whoever they may be, they come in all shapes and sizes. So some of the most common is it's really the parent centering themselves in your adult life. Let's say you're married, but your maternal impactor still expects everyone to spend the holidays at your childhood home because that's the tradition. It actually is appropriate for traditions to change. And yet, that maternal or paternal impactor doesn't want it to change. They want to stay the center. Parents who are doing that, most of the time, they don't realize that they're really fostering a lot of resentment in adult kids. But they want us to be close to kids a lot of times. And what happens is we don't want to be around them if we feel like it's all got to be their way or they are expecting or needing us to be a particular way. So control with money is one thing, and then control around other things is also usually present. So some scenarios to be aware of with disordered boundaries is the parent as the best friend scenario. Listen, your parents, parental impactors, whether you're raised by an aunt or a foster mom or dad, whoever it is, they're not your friends, even if you have an amazing relationship with them. From a therapeutic point of view, the mutuality, right, that is inside an actual friendship isn't an appropriate dynamic for parents and adult children. It's like, do you ever want to hear your maternal impactor telling you about sex with your paternal impactor? You don't. Or their past sexual experiences or whatever. That isn't what we want. So even when we are grown and healthy, we're a grown-up healthy adult and we're still relating to our parents, there will always be things that it's not appropriate for us to share. I see this trend now with people being like, my mom is my best friend. And listen, I have an amazing relationship with my mom, but she's always going to be my mother. She's not my best friend because I have girlfriends. I have my friends. I have Vic. I have my life, And sometimes people are just saying that. And maybe it sounds like I'm splitting hairs, but I see this when mothers are saying this about their teenage daughters. And I promise you that 16-year-old does not want her mother to be her best friend. They don't want the mom to be like the cool mom, to allow things to be going down in the house. They really don't. I mean, we want our parents to create structure to the best of their ability so that we can have our own experiences. Of course, we're going to step out of that structure. But I think that there is a lot of guilt that comes along if you grew up with any parental impactor being like, you're my best friend, or treating you like you were equals, or telling you inappropriate things when you were younger, telling you the problems they're having in their marriage or at work, or financial stress problems when you're 9, 10, 11, 12, 15. That is stuff that it's your child's shoulders are really not strong enough to bear the weight of those things. And yet many of us were raised being parentified, it's called, where you are doing adults things, whether it's emotional things or whether it's actually cooking dinner because your parents are working or whatever's happening at a young age, or maybe someone has an addiction and they can't do it, they're unwell. Nobody needs to tell us how to do these things, right? We just know because kids are so adaptive that we do what must be done. So, inappropriate or unhealthy or disordered boundaries in your adult life, if you live close to your parental impactors, they may just drop over your place without talking, without asking, without texting, without letting you know. They may have unrealistic expectations, right? That you'll pick up the phone no matter when they call. They may get mad. They may want to be invited to things that are just for your friends. Like maybe you're getting married and having a bachelor or bachelorette party, and they're like pissed. You have to invite them or they're going to be mad. Again, that is a centering and it is a boundary issue because you should be free to have your own friends, right? And to do your own thing without feeling responsible for their emotional experience. A big problem many of you talked about in the survey is parents who are endlessly giving you advice that you're not asking for. So they're ready to give you their 2 cents at any moment, and they feel like they have a right to weigh in on every decision that you make. Now, it's painful because especially if they disagree and they live their life differently, or if they wanted you to do something else with your life. Maybe you're having a creative career that you're going for, and they're like, that's not a career, you should be an accountant or whatever. The judgment is so heavy and it's so bad for our own self-esteem, where boundaries are really the key to your sovereignty, which is what you need and which is what you want. And parents can also be extremely judgmental about everything, from how you look, your physicality, your friends, your partner's career. All of that stuff is a boundary violation if they are just spewing and telling you those things. Also, there can be interfering with your personal life. Triangulating with your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, meaning telling them something that you told your parent in confidence, again, centering themselves in your life. So that is a lot of stuff. And listen, your situation is not going to fall into every one of these categories. But I think that it's important that you hear them all, because this is all the stuff that was in the survey and all the stuff that I've seen in the last 25 years of being a psychotherapist. There are so many different ways that our family of origin, and it doesn't just have to be parents. This can also be siblings or cousins or whomever, where you feel incredibly obligated, or maybe you feel like you have to overfunction for them. Or my position in my family was more like the savior. I was like the hero child. So whenever there was trouble, I was the person that was called and was figuring out what we should do. And all of that is very heavy. This is not to say that we don't want to, of our own accord, add value to the relationships we have with our family of origin. That's not what I mean. Boundary violations are things that make us feel obligated, where we are feeling intruded upon from our family of origin. So I want to give you a little bit of language that can help you if you're dealing with auto advice giving, right? We'll just hit one area right now. So if you know that your parental impactor, whoever they are, is so quick, if you tell them that you're in a situation or you're upset about something, they're super quick to give you advice, you can set them up to succeed by saying, I have something I'd like to share, but before I do, I want you to know that I'm working on trusting my own intuition, and I'd really love it if you could just listen with kindness and refrain from offering solutions. I'll get there myself, and I really appreciate that. So we're warning them so that we can set them up to succeed. And they may not like it because it makes them feel good, and maybe to them, giving you auto advice, that's the way that they're loving you. But if you don't feel loved by it, that's where you have to draw a boundary. And this is where talking true and real communication comes in to the mix. I'll give you a couple of different scripts that you can use. Please stop giving me unsolicited advice and criticism. I would love it if you could just be happy for me or just listen, because a lot of parents, if we don't do what they want us to do and we share something with them, they're very quick to go, oh, that's not so great. I don't like that so much. Again, all of this judgment that is so heavy. And it can be something as simple as, hey, I'm actually not looking for input right now. Can you please just listen? In my own young life, it got to a point with my mother where I said, Mom, I've asked you a bunch of times to stop trying to fix my problems. I'm not a problem for you to fix. You've done your job. I'm just letting you know I'm upset and I'm in pain. And if you don't want me to call you when I'm upset and I'm in pain, if you can't give me advice, then I won't. Because this is more painful than not talking to you at all. Because it would make me so mad. It would make me feel like I was a problem she thought she could fix. I was like, hello, you cannot. Just hang with me. Just have compassion, right? How about just saying, I'm sorry, babe. Thanks. I love that. I feel seen. That's all I need. And she finally got it, but listen, it was a good enough relationship. It's still a good enough relationship for me to want to do the work in and let her know. And you can even say things very lovingly, like, what I really need in this moment is for you to just listen, please. Some parents are really just clueless. They don't know. Most parental units or parental impactors, they're not trying to harm us, but they do. So I give you a couple of ideas of how you can say no to things as well. So for this topic, your top of mind, for the next 48 hours, I want you to pay attention to how you feel while you're interacting with anyone in your family of origin. Just write it down, right? And if you don't interact with them the next 48 hours, think back to your last few interactions with them so you start to get a more clear picture of what is happening for you. In the Go Deeper section, right? So this is the section where you're going to really drill down into what is specifically happening for you. I've given you a bunch of questions, and we're going to be really looking at what are the boundary violations that are happening, what are the expectations or the entitlements, where are the attempts at overt or covert control with money or guilt, because the more clear you are, the easier it's going to be for you to start to establish better boundaries. And the last thing you're doing for this topic, the take action, is I want you to use the Go Deeper questions, right? You're going to take your answers to start to get a much more clear idea of what are your preferences, your desires, your limits, and your deal breakers when it comes to your family of origin. And then you're going to slowly but surely start stepping back from things that you can stop doing. You're going to start implementing gently and with love. We can do it with love. New boundaries, just making a simple request that they stop giving you advice. Everything that we're talking about doing is going to be slow but sure. You can always do it with kindness and love, and you can always do it with a little more heat if you need to. So that is going to cover it for boundaries with family.